Baal Habayit and Baalat Habayit, and all Bet Hashem, the Buddha family. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu give everyone here bracha v'tzlacha, siyata d'ishmaya gedola, malka dam v'chatav v'kiyata. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu Bet Hashem spill on everyone's shefat b'lidai. May all our prayers be accepted b'ratzon, and may this year Bet Hashem HaKadosh Baruch Hu give us the ability of only coming together with our own personal geula, our own personal redemption, and the geula for all Klal Am Yisrael. Amen. Bet Hashem. Inabotai, tonight we would like to talk about something that we think is very, very important and very useful for all of us to try to bring change and positivity within our lives. But every single year, when we arrive to this period of time of the year, we try to explain and try to make sure that we are all aware the potential of the time. The Zohar HaKadosh says, there is a concept in the Mishnah where it says, Derech Eretz Kadma LeTorah. What does that mean? In normal, we translate this according to all the Chazal, that before you try to achieve Torah, you must have a base which is Derech Eretz. The Zohar HaKadosh says that that's not the explanation at all for this Mishnah. But rather what? Before you try to achieve Torah, which represents the teachings of the higher world, of Olam HaElyon, of the world to come, we must first try to achieve the Chokhmah, the understanding of this world. When you understand our world and how it functions and how we're able to succeed in it, we essentially stand a bigger step close to achieve Torah, the world of above. The Zohar HaKadosh relates this to this period of time. Being that it's a time of what? A time of great darkness, where if we look at our clocks, we find that the day ends very, very quickly. A time of cold, a time of rain. It seems to be a time that doesn't seem very fruitful. But rather, Zohar HaKadosh says, if we want to understand when a person receives bracha in his life, what did we say? Derech Eretz Kadma LeTorah. Look at the world. Look how the world functions. Look how people function. Look how natural panasa or natural bracha is produced. You understand that, you'll understand how bracha exists. Zohar HaKadosh says, if you look in this period of the time, it's the time that all the people that have fields or crops, what are they doing? They're praying. And they're begging HaKadosh Baruch Hu, send down your abundance. Send down your bracha. Have it rain on our fields. Have your presence be amongst our lands in order for the upcoming year when the crops will grow to be a fruitful crops, to be a blessful year, to be a year of bracha, to be a year of success, to be a year that we will all be able to grow from the year before. Zohar HaKadosh says, that is this period of time. So whenever we approach a time that seems to be not so full of holidays, like now we finished Baruch Hashem Chanukah, we have maybe a month or two before we enter into Purim and the preparation of Pesach. It doesn't seem like a time of an opportunity for change in our life. We usually tend to look at months like Elul or Tishrei at times of change. Zohar HaKadosh is not at all. In this period of time, times of darkness, period of winter, we have the possibility to change our Mazal. And that is, Abotai, what I would like to talk about a little bit today. And to try to get into what we can do on a practical level today to bring within our life what we all want. Whether it be on a personal level, our own panasa, our own zivug, our own children, our own mazal, our own happiness, our own health, whatever it might be. In order to understand this, we're going to, Bezrat Hashem, enter into a beautiful teaching that talks about what we are going to start Bezrat Hashem in this upcoming week. And that is what? What are we starting this upcoming week? No, Shemot. And what comes with Shemot? A time that we call Zman Yemei HaShovavim. What does that mean? It's the time of the Shovavim. So we would like, Abotai, today to try to understand what is Shovavim and what all of us can come to a place of applying, whether we are men, whether we are women, whether we are children, whether we are older, whether we are Rabbanim, whether we are at any stage or at any position that we could possibly imagine. So first, Abotai, we have to understand what is Shovavim. So we know, Abotai, that on the Pshat, Shovavim is the acronym for all these parashot that we're all going to read from the book of Shemot, Parashat Shemot, until Parashat Mishpatim. Where Shovavim is just the first letter of each word of the parashot. The Zohar HaKadosh says that this period of Yemei HaShuvavim is the time of Tikkun Midat HaYesod. Now, what is Midat HaYesod? So without getting into too much detail, Midat HaYesod is the sixth Sephirah from the bottom Sephirot, and it's a Sephirah that represents the foundation of a man. Even if you take the word Yesod in Hebrew, when you translate it, the translation is foundation, Yesod. Zohar HaKadosh says, in the period of all the parashot that we read, that Bnei Israel were in slavery in Egypt, it's a time of Tikkun Midat HaYesod. Why so? So Zohar HaKadosh is something very simple. We know that Adam HaRishon, when he sinned with three sins. First sin was Shfichut Damim, spilling of blood. The second sin was Avodah Zarah, idol worship. And the third sin was a sin with his berit. We ask, how? So Avodah Zarah, idol worship, it's very, very easy and clear. Why? Kadosh Baruch Hu asked him, don't eat from the tree. Listen to me. I am your leader. I am your God. Adam went against it and tried to idolize himself and follow his own desire and his own will and his own, even wanting to lead idol worship. One sin. The second sin was that he brought Shfichut Damim to the world. He brought spilling of blood. With the moment that Adam sinned, this idea of death now became possible. And the third sin was Gilui Arayot, improper relations. What is this aspect of improper relation? Once he sinned, he left Chava and went to a river for 130 years. And Zohar HaKadosh says in that river for 130 years, he sinned terrible sins. Our forefathers came forward to essentially fix the world, repair the sin, and bring the world back to its original state. Zohar HaKadosh says, Avraham Avinu Alav Shalom fixed Avodah Zarah. Idol worship. We know what he did when he was a kid. We know all his life was converting people. At the time, it was a mitzvah to convert people. His entire life was based and focused on repairing the sin of Avodah Zarah. Yitzchak came along and fixed Shfichut Damim. How Shfichut Damim? Yitzchak Avinu Alav Shalom, he was sacrificed. He actually went through Shfichut Damim. Yitzchak Avinu Alav Shalom literally gave his life to repair the sin of Shfichut Damim. The last sin that was done was the sin of Gilui Arayot. The improper relations that Adam had throughout those 130 years. Zohar HaKadosh says, the foundation, which is the Yesod, the Brit, being that it's so fundamental within Adam, when it gets blemished, it's very hard to fix. So you could imagine a building. And the building on the 20th floor, a wall breaks. Okay, you take some patching, you patch, you paint. It's fine. When the foundation starts to break, when the Yesod starts to break, it needs a lot of repair. Zohar HaKadosh says, Yaakov in Alav Shalom, all his life he devoted to fixing the foundation of Adam. And it didn't just end there. It continued with Yosef, and it continued with all Am Yisrael. In what form? In the form of them being sent as slaves to Egypt, where the 220 years of slavery were a complete direct result of fixing the foundation, Midat HaYesod, in Bnei Israel, of Adam. Once the Midat HaYesod, the foundation, was repaired, then obviously with the foundation comes the titlement of who Bnei Israel were. Zohar HaKadosh says, when Bnei Israel fixed the foundation, they received once again the crown. Or in simpler words, when the foundation is clean and beautiful and fixed and mishubach, obviously the mazal and the bracha and everything that comes along with it automatically gets fixed and automatically moves in a more positive manner, in a more positive light. The foundation, as Zohar HaKadosh says, was the last thing, the most important thing, and the hardest thing it was for the forefathers and who we are, Am Yisrael, to fix and to repair. Based off of that, we can understand something very simple. Chazal said, if Bnei Israel, through the slavery, were able to fix their foundation, then obviously we can too tap into that energy, to that existence of reparation, through the time when we read those parashot, through that period that we go over those years of slavery, we could too come forward and repair such foundation, such a fundamental base of who we are, to change our mazal, to be able to be worthy of receiving much more than necessarily we deserve right now. That is, Rabotai, the period of Yemei HaShovavim. Being that that's the case, now we could understand why Chazal said that it's truly a crucial moment of changing a person's mazal. If we change our foundation, we're no longer the same person. If we're no longer the same person in the eyes of Shamayim, then obviously we could achieve much more and we could receive much more and we can do so much more. This period of time, Rabotai, of Shovavim, is truly a time of transformation. Now, how? It sounds beautiful. How can we do it? So Chazal gave all these tips. They're all beautiful tips that we should all try to install within our life, whether it be fasts in this period, that is, if you fast the entire Shovavim, or even if you do it throughout a 10-year period, it's like you completely fix your foundation. Some say to give tzedakah, Rabbi Nachman says to do tikkun kelali. So many little mitzvot and so many little things that a person can do to change, to fix, to repair, and to be something new, to bring something new to the world. But Rabotai, every year, and I'm sure many people are thinking here this question, all the women come to us and they say, Rav, you speak so much about Shovavim, because really the next month, that's what we're going to be talking about. It's such a deep concept, there's so much sustenance. It's something that needs so much understanding. All the women, they say, what's the connection between us and the Berit? Yesod is something that men have. Berit is something that men have. How are we able to take advantage of such an important time? It seems like this entire time that all the Mekubalim go into depth of explaining that opportunity of changing our mazal has nothing to do with us. So, if we all come forward and want to understand really what is Shovavim, we have to understand, first of all, how half of Am Yisrael are able to even make anything out of it. And put aside women. A lot of people, they come to us and say, Rab, what's fast? How does a fast create change within me? How does reading Tikkun HaKelali create change within me? It's not practical. There's not a lot of substance that we can hold on to and say, Tov, if I'm doing this and I'm directly affecting myself in growth and change. How can a person attach himself to such mitzvot that, who are we to attach ourselves to fast and to tikkunim, or some say to do Gilgul Sheleg? Here it's easy to do Gilgul Sheleg, Baruch Hashem, there's Sheleg everywhere you go, but it's not things that are obtainable for most of us. So how can we truly understand Yemei HaShovavim in a way that we can all, Be'ezrat Hashem, take advantage of it and leave this period much bigger than when we started? So we're thinking about this a lot. And we thought about a beautiful concept that the Zohar HaKadosh brings, that it's one thing that a person can do, or even not do, and change his life. And that is what? Zohar HaKadosh says, a man has a tool within his life, that this tool could completely change the essence of who he is. Change his life, change his mazal, change every single moment forward in a drastic manner. And in order to achieve it, he needs to do nothing. Zohar HaKadosh says, this tool is a tool that we live with on a daily basis, and it's a tool that we don't understand its power. And that is what? The Zohar HaKadosh says, the power and the ability of the machshava, of the mind. And now, when we think of our mind and we think of our consciousness, we don't always look at it as a tool. We look at it as something it's just us. It's with us every moment of our life. It guides us in every moment of our life. But it's truly something that we need to understand. Our consciousness, Rabotai, essentially, is the reasons to all our good deeds. It's the reason to all our bad deeds. It's our challenges. It's our hardships. Our consciousness, Rabotai, is something that if we look at it from a step back, we invest our entire lives within it. Most people spend all their livelihood not on actual sustenance for their body, because you can just eat flour and bread, you'll be fine. But most people invest their entire livelihood on making sure that they feel good. Our consciousness is one of the most present things within our life. And it's something that we need to understand. Because something that is so close to us should be something that at minimum we understand what it's capable of and what it's not capable of. So we would like to try to understand a little bit of what is this concept of consciousness and how we can use our own consciousness and our own self-being to change our life without doing anything. And I want everyone to hold on to this thought. Zohar Kadosh says that in this world, all our actions are dubbed with a name. And they're called what? Zohar Kadosh says our actions are looked at least from the aspect of the Zohar, as birds. It calls it tziporim. Now, Zohar Kadosh says that there are two types of birds, and we can see this even within our own world. There are some birds that can fly very high and can go very far. And some birds they are stuck to the ground, and they are bound to the speed of their legs. Some birds are stuck to the earth, and there they stay for the rest of their life. The Zohar Kadosh says, so too with our actions. There are actions that go very far and climb to very, very high levels, and some actions that just sink to the ground and stay there for eternity. What is the difference between those actions? Zohar Kadosh is very simple. It's something that it calls birichimu ubedechilu. And that is what? Zohar Kadosh says, fear and love. And we will explain. Every action that a person does, not all of them create change on a spiritual level. Not all of them change who we are. Not all of them mean anything. And we can give a small analogy. It's like we take this piece of paper, we hold it, and we drop it. In Shamayim, did they write anything? No. I picked a paper, I dropped it. That action didn't go far at all. That action disappeared with time. There will be no remembrance of it. There will be no influence of it. And it will disappear as our life moves on. It's an action with no wings. It goes nowhere. With the same piece of paper, we can sit down and have a moment of anger, a moment of hate, a moment of desire to do something bad. And I take that paper and I crumble it and I drop it and I throw it. Was that recorded? Befadai. In Shammai, maybe they'll say, you were ungrateful, you were unhappy, there was no simcha, you kicked away the Shekhinah because of this sadness and this anger that was with you. According to the Rambam, if you were angry, then you're already not even considered to be Jewish. You did an action with no substance behind it. It's an action that's what? That's the utmost of change in Shamayim. We say about it, the same action, or nearly the same action, can have two completely different outcomes. The only difference between them, that one had no thought or any consciousness within, dropping it, and the other was invested with a lot of emotion and thought and inner being within that action. Zohar Kadosh says, the difference between some actions and others, that the actions that have no thought or consciousness invested within them go nowhere. And on the opposite side, the smallest actions can go for eternity. It's all depending on what? On how much thought and consciousness was invested within. And we can give a few other small little analogies. It's like a husband or a wife that wants to bring a gift to one another, and they want to bring something special that will be appreciated. It's not necessarily what expense he will buy or she will buy, but rather what? How much thought was invested within it. How much time was invested within it. How much that the individual tried to invest her or his entire heart within it. The more emotion and consciousness she or he invested, the more the other will see what? Value within that action. So we see that our consciousness, with the same actions, or very similar actions at least, could create completely different outcomes. And there are so many stories that we could relate to this idea of action that are done with great intention and great love and great devotion or great thought, and action that didn't, that had completely different effects on the world. It's like the story that we love so much with Baal Shem Tov. They said that Baal Shem Tov one time, he witnessed on a young boy that brought nachat ruach, brought satisfaction and happiness to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. in a manner that no other person in Am Yisrael did on Yom Kippur. So Sarah Baal Shem Tov grabbed this young boy and he asked him, he said, how did you pray? What did you do this Yom Kippur that you brought so much nachat to Hashem? So he says that his father owned some sort of like a bar, or achsaniya, it's not very clear. And one of the leaders of the city desired to dine at that achsaniya on Yom Kippur. So he said, if I say no, chas v'shalom, I can get the death penalty. It was many years ago. I have no choice. It's pikuach nefesh dochev in Yom Kippur. So he said that he went to that achsaniya and the entire Yom Kippur, he was so sad, but he needed to serve this king or leader or whatever he was. So the entire Yom Kippur, he desired to pray, he desired to attach himself to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But he didn't know the tefillot. So what did he do? The entire Yom Kippur, he sat with Kavanah and he said, Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Daled, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Chet, Tet, Yud. The entire Yom Kippur, he repeated letters. Baal Shem Tov says, that little tefillah, not even words, just letters, made such an impact in the world. Being that it's not about the action, but rather what? The consciousness that was invested within. Our conscious, Rabotai, is bigger than the limitations of our physical world. When we do an action, it's limited on how far it can go. It's limited on what it can do. It's limited on how long it could last. But the intentions, a person's conscious, is endless. It's vast. And it's something that we never truly understand its power. And that's why, as a general rule, and maybe later on in the class we'll do some questions and we'll get into more detail, any action that has a lot of intention could be very good or could be very bad. Because like we mentioned, what has intention and emotion goes far. And it can go far very positively, and it can go far, chas v'shalom lo alenu, very negatively. And this is, Rabotai, something that we start to see, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu embedded even within us. HaKadosh Baruch Hu went far, seeing generations upon generations, seeing that he needs to give some extra influence on such a powerful aspect within our life. And that is what? Zohar HaKadosh says, there are two body parts in a person's body that Hashem saw that they are the utmost powerful body parts that a person has. Being that they are so powerful and influential and can create so much change within his life, he decided to have his name stamped within them. And that is what we call the two britot that exist within a person's life. And that is what? The first brit, which is brit, that we all know, brit milah, a child's brit, that when on the 8th day we send it to brit milah. And the second brit is brit halashon. It's the covenant that HaKadosh Baruch Hu put on our tongues. That with a person's tongue, a person can fulfill the mitzvot to a certain extent, that a person can do with what? With the berit. And the question is, why both of these mitzvot, both of these body parts, essentially have HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence within them? Because they are two body parts that are nearly 100% fueled by what? By emotion. They are two body parts that act solely, not on necessarily logic, not on necessarily timing, but rather a person's consciousness. And we could explain. Brit, as we know, I'm not going to get into detail, is one complete body part that functions only on what? On desire, on love, on te'ava, on ratzon. The brit is what? It's a body part that lives off of only consciousness. We'll put that aside for a moment. And on the other hand, we have the lashon, the tongue. The tongue, Rabotai, in that exact same very way, is based off of consciousness. When you feel angry, you don't just tap your leg. The person screams. He tries to express his thoughts, to express his conscious, to express what's happening within his mind. The lashon is the key to the consciousness. And now we could understand why we say Chaim ve'amavet Beyad halashon. Life and death are in the hand of the lashon. Why? Because the berit has the exact same character. That the berit, achayim ve'amavet beyad berit. Where you want to bring new life to the world, you need the berit. Both of these body parts are two body parts that function solely on emotion. And the Zohar Kadosh says, both of these body parts are also a direct reflection on who that person is. Or in other words, the foundation of each and every one of us. Our foundation starts from where we came from, and our foundation is who we make ourselves. And those two things are reliant on the two britot. Brit habrit and brit halashon. And both of these concepts, Rabotai, are the two fundamental foundations that all of us have to work with. And we'll give a few little teachings about both of them. Brit, as we know, Zohar Kadosh says, the Mazal is reliant on it. To the point we saw in last week's parasha, or 2 weeks ago, Yosef HaTzadik, he was a slave. Arizal asks, what happened that Yosef's Mazal switched to a higher Mazal? The moment he was tested with the Berit. He was tested with the Berit. The moment he passed, immediately he was deserving of Melucha. Immediately his Mazal already no longer became the same. Immediately he already climbed to a higher level when now he deserves kingdomship. We see even in Yosef's strategy on making sure that Mitzrayim stays out of the famine. It says that Yosef told Paro, I have a secret for you. Take all Egypt and tamul otam. Make them Brit Milah. And once you will make them Brit Milah, they will be able to survive the famine. So we see this concept of Brit and Itnahagut Abirit being a very, very influential part of a person's Mazal, well-being, and not just where he came from, but where he is going. And like we mentioned, this is what? A derivative, being that it's based off of emotion. The question is, Rabotai, how do the actions of words have any correlation? How does a person's tongue, in actual fruition, has some sort of closeness or some sort of yichus to the Brit? It seems a little bit far apart from one another. So in order to understand this, Rabotai, we have to understand something very, very simple. And this is what we wanted to go into a little bit depth, is this idea of the dibur, the koach of the berit halashon. A lot of the times, Rabotai, when we speak, we think that the words, they disappear. The words, they come, they last for the length that they lasted when they were in the air that was between us, and then they go to waste, and they pass with the time. Zohar Kadosh brings a famous pasuk from the Nevi'im that give us a little bit of an understanding on what this concept of dibur is. Before we get to dibur, we have to understand what dibur as a physical aspect holds. Dibur, we all know it's here, nachon? Tov. Does anybody hear us? Rabotai, I'm asking. Nobody hears us. No, we're asking. Does anyone hear us? Ken, now. Yeah, everybody hears us, nachon? We know we're talking, nachon? Does anybody see it? No. Can anyone grab it? No. Can anybody feel it? No. Can anybody hold it? No. So dibur is here. It's present. It lives within us. It has a lot of influence on us. But it's ungraspable. There's another thing that's like this too. Zohar Kadosh said it's spirituality. Spirituality, we all know it exists. We all know that our neshama is alive in spirituality. One time there was a person that asked us, Rav, prove to us that spirituality exists. So we told him, when a person's heart stops, what happens? He said, he dies. I said, what happens if you keep the heart beating? But he died? I said, yes. So he said, no, it doesn't work like that. I said, why doesn't it work like that? Because if he dies, he dies. So he said, but if the heart is beating? He said, no, he's missing something. What is he missing? He's missing the neshama. So it's a simple proof that spirituality is amongst us. But spirituality does not hold form, does not hold grasp. You can't grab it, you can't hold it, and you can't see it. But it's there. Zohar Kadosh says, Dibur is the exact same thing. When we talk, it's our ability to create a spiritual being, a spiritual existence. Something that exists within a world that is not a physical, tangible world. And that's what the Zohar Kadosh brings from the Nevi'im. It says, Ki bal kenafayim yolich et hakol. When a person has dibur, that dibur actually creates. And it doesn't just create anything. It creates life. It creates chaim. It creates a being that is now alive, that is now present within the world. Just because we don't see it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Very similar to this aspect of like Berit. The difference is that Berit creates a physical being, Lashon creates a spiritual being. Where do we see that the Dibur, words, actually create beings of themselves? So we know very well at Matan Torah. It says, V'bnei Yisrael ra'u et hakolot. Bnei Yisrael, they saw the voices. How can you see voices? How can you see a voice? You hear a voice, you don't see a voice. So Arizal says, no. When Dibur comes to light, when Dibur comes out of the words of an individual, those words actually take a shape of a being. Those beings can be malachim, they can be seraphim, they can be whatever they are, but they are existent. That's what Bnei Yisrael were able to see. Zohar Kadosh says, Dibur, in the exact same way that the Berit creates, Dibur actually creates. And with our Dibur, we could essentially create a world that wasn't there before. And there's something very beautiful that we found in last week's parasha that can really be a hint to the strength of Koach Adibur. And that we see with the interaction of Yehuda. So it says that when Yehuda approached Yosef for the first time, he comes to Yosef, and for some reason he was shaking. He was scared. He was fearful. To the point where in the Midrash Rabbah, it says that Yehuda told Yosef, take me as a slave. Take all of us as slaves. Take all the brothers, the 10 brothers that were present, take them all as slaves. Yehuda was willing to completely surrender himself to the utmost level. Later on it says that Yosef, he was being stubborn. He says, no, I want Binyamin. All of you can go, leave me Binyamin. Suddenly, the Torah says, Yehuda gets up, says, Bi Adoni daber davar. He says, Yosef, let me say a word. But the language that the Torah uses, Bi Adoni, let me, idaber davar, speak of a word. And then it doesn't even mention what he says. And suddenly Yehuda changes his mind. Now he gets up and he says, you will break one gate, you will break another gate, you will destroy another gate. Each one of the siblings destroy one entrance. I will take 3. Egypt is destroyed today. So the Chazal say, what happened? What happened 10 minutes ago? You were surrendering and now you want to destroy a world? What occurred? We found a beautiful Zohar that can give us a little bit of an indication of the consequences of our words. The Zohar Kadosh says that when Yaakov was about to send Yosef, he took Yosef. And the end of the pasuk says, Ve'aviv shamar et hadavar. The father kept the davar, kept the word. Davar from the lashon of dibur, some sort of word. Arizal asks, what is this? Ve'aviv shamar et hadavar. Arizal says that when Yaakov bin Hashem was sending Yosef to Shechem, before he got sold as a slave, before everything, he knew that Shechem was a very, very bad place. Dinah was taken from Shechem. Shechem had a makom poranut, a place of danger. Arizal says Yaakov took Yosef and he spoke of a word. Doesn't say what word he said. But he said that word was to serve as a protector for Yosef. And that's why it says, Shamar et hadavar. He told Yosef, keep this davar, keep this word with you, and this word will protect you. What was this word? So, later on, Arizal says, this word was not a word at all. It was the reaction, the result of a word. What's the result of a word? Zohar Kadosh says, im malach. Arizal says, throughout all the journey of Yosef, you see that he had an angel that was with him. Whether it was when he was dragged down in Egypt, an angel protected him. Whether it was in the cave, there was an angel that was there with him. Whether it was an angel that taught him languages. We see throughout all the Midrashim, it's always taught of and always spoken of some sort of angel that's present. Arizal says, what angel was that? It was the angel that was created by who? Created by Yaakov, sworn to protect Yosef. If we keep this in mind, we can understand something like this. Maybe we can say that when Yehuda Tzaddik approached Yosef for the first time, he got afraid. He started to shake. He was petrified. Why was he petrified? Because he sees a Paro, a Rasha, sitting on a throne, and on top of this Rasha, who is standing? A big Malach. But not just any Malach. An angel was created clearly from Kedusha. Or maybe you can even go a step further. Maybe you could say he recognized an angel that was created by what? By his father. Yehuda, he said, how can I combat words of my father? How can I try to change words of my father? It's an angel that's created by my father. I will never be able to overcome him. Yehuda, when he saw this, he said, take me. I surrender. Take my brothers. We will all be your slaves. Yosef said one thing that changed Yehuda's mind. And that was what? That was when Yosef said, I want Binyamin. Something happened when Yehuda went to bring back Binyamin. That was what? Yaakov took Yehuda and told Yehuda, Yehuda, protect my son, Binyamin, and ensure that he comes back. Mm-hmm. We mentioned that words don't just go in vain. What do words create? They create reality. They create new life. They create a new existence. They create new spiritual beings. Maybe you can say those words, protect Binyamin, were created and actually took a form like all words that have emotion within them. In that moment, Yehuda said, now I no longer need to fight him. Now I have the angels of my father, the words of my father will stand for me. And here we see Yehuda gets up, he takes a completely different attitude. And he says, let me say a word. What word? It was not any word. It were words of Kedusha that he understood that have power of creation. And that's what we say. V'kol Mitzrayim shamu et hakolot. All Egypt, they heard what? The voices. What voices? They were talking. All Egypt heard the voices. The entire nation heard the conversation of Yosef and Yehuda. No. Arizal says what they heard the bull and the lion fighting. They heard the angels of Yosef and the angels of Yehuda being at war with one another. And we clearly see when Yosef surrenders, it says, V'lo yachal Yosef litapek mikol hanitzavim alav. Yosef couldn't anymore handle, he couldn't anymore bear all these guards that are standing on top of him. What guards climbed on top of him? Mikol hanitzavim alav. What guards? I'm not talking about guards. But rather it was what? It was the war of the words of our sages, of our ancestors. Zohar Kadosh says, throughout all our avot, we see that our patriarchs, our forefathers, they had the power of fighting. They had the power of victory. They had the power of change. But they were tzaddikim. How can they fight wars? How can they accomplish? How can they conquer? How can they do all the things that we read about them? Avraham with the kings, Yaakov with all the nations, even Shimon and Levi, they fought all Shem, 2 kids, 14. How is it possible? Arizal says, Avotenu, our forefathers, learned a secret. And that was the secret of what? Of Brit Halashon. And the power and the effect that Brit Halashon has on the world. This Brit Halashon, it's so powerful. Why? Why does the words that come out of our mouth have so much effect on the world? Because they sound nice? No, not at all. But rather because words are directly created by what? By a person's thoughts, by a person's consciousness. And that's what we say. Machshava, dibur, v'maaseh. How does a world change? It starts off with a thought. That thought always becomes a dibur, and that dibur always changes the maaseh. It starts off with a simple thought. The thought turns into a word. That word already changed reality. So we see, Abotai, that changing our reality and changing our world is not actually a big thing at all. It could be as simple as saying a word. It could be as simple as doing the smallest action, but more importantly, investing all our heart and conscience within it. The conscience and our heart and our emotion act as the wings of our actions. And even the smallest positive actions that we do, but we invest more devotion and more love and more ratzon and more desire and more emunah, that's what makes these simple acts that we already do on a daily basis fly so much higher, go so much further, and create so much more change within our life. We're looking about this period of fixing our foundation. Our foundation, Abotai, is not what we do on a day-to-day basis. It's who we are within our minds. Our foundation, Abotai, is the conscience that we walk with on a daily basis. If you control your conscience, you will control your brit 100%. You will control your mouth 1,000%. You will control your life. You will control your mazal. You will control everything in your life. Because within this world, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us a power of change. And this power of change is not an action, it's not a deed, and not an object, but rather something that we all hold in our mind. Simple machshava. Simple consciousness. Conscious, Rabotai, is the tool of succeeding in every situation and in every aspect within our life. Only if we can come to a place of what? Of holding grasp of it. Of controlling it. Of being able to dictate our thoughts. To dictate our emotions. To control when we put love, when we put more judgment, when we put back from love. When a person controls his actions, he controls all what comes out of him, and he controls all what becomes of him. And we can give about the simplest analogy on how a simple thought can change the entire world. It's a thought that we give all the time in classes. We say it's like a person walking in the street. He sees a man running. He has two ways to judge that man running. One way, let's take bad. Let's start with bad. And to say, look at that man. He's running now, but I want to remind, it's all in a person's thoughts. He didn't do anything yet. Look at that man running. He stole something. And now he's running from the police. What a bad city we live in. What a terrible country we live in. All these people within this world, they are always trying to steal and to harm and to do bad. This place is Chaman el Itzlan. So because you're in that mood now, you are spreading energy. A person walked by you in a negative manner. You looked at him and you say, look, another bad man in the city. So you're not going to act with him the way you were to act to a normal person, but rather you will act with him what? An aspect of, like a negative world, a negative reality. That individual that's looking at you says, look at this man. What a bad city we live in. It's true. He goes on his way home. He fights with this person. He fights with his wife. His kids are upset now. His kids fight with the teacher. And suddenly the entire city goes into complete ruins of negativity. On the other side, see the man running. And the man sits and thinks and says, wow. He's running to do a mitzvah. He's running to do something good. What a beautiful city we live in. And then a person walks in the street and he sees someone that needs help. He says, I'm going to help too. I was inspired today. And he goes and helps. And someone's looking and says, look, he's helping somebody. I will help too. And suddenly the whole city changes to a completely positive place. We see, Abotai, that even the power of one little thought. When we control our thoughts, we control who we are. And who we are is the foundation of our surrounding. It's the foundation of our family. It's the foundation of our future. It's the foundation of even our past. If we could control one small thought at a time and ensure that one small thought at a time is directed in a positive manner, we could truly change our mazal, change our panasa, change our health, change our life, change our family, change everything that is around us. So Be'ezrat Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will give us the koach, give us the power to truly wield this great tool which is our minds, and know that we will always, B'ezrat Hashem, bring forward positive growth and positive change within our lives. Amen. Is there any questions, Rabotai? Any questions, Rabotai?
Is that the concept of Bina and...
So, Bina is the left side of the Chabad. So you have Chokhmah, Bina, and Dat. That's where Chabad comes from. So you have the right side, which is usually more holy. That's why we usually do holy things with the right hand. Always with the right, more holy. Left side is usually more negative, or more left side. Left side is more emotional. So for example, you can see this even within the man and the woman. The man is usually compared to the right side, and the woman is compared to the left side. So the Bina is the emotional aspect of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's consciousness. So when you do an action with emotion, you awaken HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Bina, which is his emotional side. So the idea of Bina is on all aspects the more materialistic, emotional aspect of Hashem's consciousness. Where our consciousness is built off of that. We are replicas of Hashem. We're Tzelem Eloki. So we don't have necessarily Bina, but in that way, but we have within our consciousness a more emotional side. Any other questions? Zero, no questions?
Somebody who doesn't think what they do, they do without consciousness. Can we blame them?
So look, there is an idea of anus achamane patre. When a person is anus, he is patur. But anus is when he truly had no consciousness within it. So it makes sense. If it's something that had no hate, desire, love, anything, it's not an action, it doesn't mean anything. That's why you are patur. Move forward. There was nothing behind it. You were not, it wasn't in your hands, it wasn't in your choice. So obviously you are patur, and that action can't create repercussion within your life. But if you are just being closed-minded and saying, I didn't see, then you clearly have emotion there. You clearly have either it be selfishness or laziness. It's an emotion. The idea of love and fear is just the parents of emotion. So usually you have chesed and gvura. Chesed and gvura are the parents of all what comes below. So if it has any sort of conscious and emotion, it has sustenance. It has value. If it's truly no love, no fear, no emotion, no laziness, no nothing, then move forward in life, you are anus. And if you're anus, you are patur. But if you choose purposely to just be reckless in doing things without action, then it's a big baya. You know what we say the difference between a chicken and a man is? That one has a head and one doesn't. So because you have a head, you have responsibility, you can get a driver's license, if you cross the street, you'll get a ticket. That's what gives us essentially everything, it's our consciousness. If we don't have our consciousness, then we'll cross the street. No one gives, maybe in Montreal they give tickets to chickens, but not in any other place. So if a person is walking with no consciousness, he needs to earn one or do something, I don't know. Study some Torah or get married, he'll get consciousness. Any questions? No questions? So my Kadosh Baruch Hu give everyone big bracha v'atzlacha and a lot of Yeshuot and Minkiyat Hashem. Should we go to the